After 35 days, the president announces an end to the government shutdown.
I am very proud to announce today that we have reached a deal to end the shutdown and reopen the federal government.
The deal reached between Congress and the president on border security and when the government is scheduled to reopen. Plus, San Diego has one of the largest homeless populations in the nation. Is the situation getting better? The latest numbers from the homeless count. And a bill is unveiled by local leaders in response to the 2017-2018 hepatitis A outbreak that killed 20 people. What it's proposing. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. It's the 35th day of the partial government shutdown, but Congress has reached a deal to reopen it for 3 weeks. The president spoke at the White House today, announcing the compromise in his plans for border security.
In a short while, I will sign a bill to open our government for 3 weeks until February 15th. I will make sure that all employees receive their back pay very quickly or as soon as possible. It'll happen fast. I am asking Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to put this proposal on the floor immediately. I have seen and heard from enough Democrats and Republicans that they are willing to put partisanship aside, I think, and put the security of the American people first. I do believe they're going to do that. They have said they are for complete border security, and they have finally and fully acknowledged that having barriers, fencing, or walls, or whatever you want to call it, will be an important part of the solution. Based on operational guidance from the experts in the field, they will put together a Homeland Security package for me to shortly sign into law. Over the next 21 days, I expect that both Democrats and Republicans will operate in good faith. This is an opportunity for all parties to work together for the benefit of our whole beautiful, wonderful nation.
Just before the president's announcement, there was a rally at the San Diego airport against the shutdown. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman says while workers are happy to hopefully be getting paid soon, there's still uncertainty.
Federal workers and their unions protested the ongoing government shutdown Friday.
Stop the shutdown! Stop the shutdown! Stop the shutdown! Stop the shutdown!
During the rally, President Trump announced he would sign legislation to end the partial shutdown for 3 weeks while he negotiates funding for border security.
At the end of the 3 weeks, unless what he wants or the other side wants, it's going to be a stalemate. It's going to happen again.
Eric Olmos is an FAA employee who has been forced to work without pay during the shutdown.
I'm still thinking 3 weeks down the road, what's going to happen then? So everybody needs some level of security and confidence, their job, their relationship, everything. You have to have that. If not, you're going to be unstable. You're going to be not knowing what's going to happen. And that instability, that insecurity, I don't think anybody would ask for that in any type of relationship or thing that they have, especially when it comes to your paycheck and you're the only one getting paid in your household. Who wants that? I don't want it.
Democratic Congressman Scott Peters was at the protest and says he hopes Trump understands shutdowns are not a bargaining tool.
Look, we're not going to go with the shutdown thing. If he tries to use a shutdown as leverage, he should have got the message by now that that's not acceptable to Democrats.
Peters says he thinks there's a good possibility a deal can be struck for border security within the next 3 weeks.
He probably won't get everything he wants. We'll probably have to give more than we want. But let's not use these poor federal workers as pawns.
Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Remain in Mexico is officially underway. The Trump administration's new policy for processing asylum seekers. It started today at the San Ysidro border crossing. Migrants will now be made to wait in Mexico while their cases go through U.S. courts. The policy does not apply to migrant children traveling alone or migrants from Mexico. The policy is expected to expand to other border crossings, but will likely face legal challenges. The Regional Task Force on the Homeless began its annual count of the homeless population in San Diego County today. KPBS reporter Priya Sridhar met up with the volunteers early this morning as they headed out.
What, you were in the military? We're going to try and get you some help, all right? We're trying.
It's the annual We All Count Homeless Project Count, where dozens of volunteers from the Regional Task Force on the Homeless canvass the county, counting and surveying the homeless population.
We're here today to try and get an accurate count, an accurate number of the number of unsheltered in San Diego, which tells us if what we're doing is successful or not successful, and also helps us better allocate resources.
Nathan Fletcher, county supervisor for District 4, helps survey people from his district.
We'll try and help out a little bit. You hang in there.
The count is required by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development every other year in order to get funding for homeless services. Last year, the agency gave $20 million to San Diego based on data collected. This year, for the first time, drones are being used to help locate homeless encampments across the county that might not be easily accessible to the volunteers.
It's vitally important that we use every piece of technology available to give us an accurate count, because without knowing the scope of the problem, we don't know what we need to do.
Jason Richardson has been homeless for a year and a half. He participated in the survey and thinks it's important, but isn't sure how much it'll help him directly.
Actually, it helps. It does help some. It's, unfortunately, I think it's more along the lines of a lot of the other stuff, though, that the city's put out. It's to help the future homeless. I've come across that statement more than once.
Volunteers will continue to count the homeless until Sunday. The data from the surveys will be released later this year. Priya Sridhar, KPBS News.
Many elected officials took part in the homeless count, including Assemblyman Todd Gloria. Later, he announced a bill to protect the public from future health outbreaks such as hepatitis A. KPBS health reporter Susan Murphy has more.
On the heels of a state audit that blamed the city and county of San Diego for failing to control a deadly hepatitis A outbreak, Assemblyman Todd Gloria is vowing to never let it happen again.
587 cases were reported, 402 people were hospitalized, and of course, 20 people died.
His proposed legislation, SB 262, requires county public health officials to promptly notify cities in their jurisdiction about disease outbreaks. It also mandates that counties provide data on where cases are concentrated and how many residents are affected, safety measures that were not in place when the highly contagious liver disease spread across the county starting in 2017.
This is an aggressive approach to what needs to be done, which is, of course, taking care of the public health and ensuring that the most vulnerable in our community are not ignored.
Senator Tony Atkins, City Councilwoman Jennifer Campbell, and County Supervisor Nathan Fletcher joined Gloria for the announcement. Fletcher says he'll work tirelessly to implement audit recommendations and help pass the new bill.
So often in the aftermath of a crisis or a tragedy, people move on to what's next. But what is incumbent upon us as elected leaders is to learn the lessons of the past and then to take action so that we can move forward and not repeat those.
The Democratic leaders acknowledged their participation in the early morning homeless count illuminates their work is far from done.
When you look at some of the conditions, it's closely related to the need to make sure that you're protecting the public safety.
And our fellow citizens who are on the streets must be housed. They must have wraparound services.
The bill is pending a committee review. Susan Murphy, KPBS News.
Roger Stone, a former advisor to President Trump, is indicted on grand jury charges by special counsel Robert Mueller. Stone's home in Florida was raided by the FBI this morning. He's accused of trying to steal emails from WikiLeaks during the 2016 campaign in hopes of damaging then candidate Trump's opponent. Following his court appearance, Stone said he will not testify against the president and will plead not guilty. The president responded to the indictment in CNN's exclusive video of the arrest, tweeting, "Greatest witch hunt in the history of our country. No collusion. Border coyotes, drug dealers, and human traffickers are treated better. Who alerted CNN to be there?"
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour on day 35, a deal to reopen the government with no money for a border wall. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
The state of California will sue one of its own cities for not doing enough to address the housing crisis. The city of Huntington Beach is the target. Local governments are required by the state to come up with a regional housing plan, but Huntington Beach has been in violation since 2015. Last year, a law took effect that allows the state to take legal action. St. Paul's Episcopal Cathedral in Bankers Hill is facing controversy over a new development proposal. As KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen explains, the project supporters say the pros far outweigh the cons.
The clear soprano voice of Reverend Penny Bridges echoes through the sanctuary of St. Paul's at a Sunday morning service. This church is known for its music. Bridges is the dean, or head pastor, of St. Paul's, and she's been rallying support among congregants for a project she says will expand the church's ministry and give it financial security in the future.
We think of ourselves as the spiritual cornerstone of Bankers Hill, and in a way a physical cornerstone too, because the cathedral is such a physical statement, and we think that this will enhance our ability to serve the neighborhood, the community, as we have done now for 150 years.
If the project is approved by the City Council, St. Paul's will sell a portion of its land to a developer, Graystar. The developer would then build a high-rise with 2 floors of commercial space that St. Paul's would own as a condo. Bridges says that would double the church's current office space and provide more meeting space for community groups. The project also includes a courtyard open to the public and, most importantly, 204 apartments.
We're very concerned with the housing crisis, and very pleased to be partnering with someone who will provide some relief. Obviously, it's a small piece of the huge picture, but some relief for the housing crisis, and especially some affordable housing for, I think the technical term is very low income residents of San Diego.
Those affordable units are a big selling point. Some city council members have chided developers for choosing to pay a fee so they don't have to include low-income homes in their projects. The 18 affordable units in this project would be open to, for example, a single parent with 2 kids making less than $44,000 per year.
One thing I want to say is there's no opposition here to the density. We welcome more people. It helps our business district. It does a lot of things.
Leo Wilson is the chair of Uptown Planners, the volunteer community planning group. He says the proposed building's height, 223 feet, is excessive.
And actually, one reason they're so high is there's a lot of luxury units up there. There's going to be a sky lounge, a pool. You know, they could reduce this building to, say, 170 or somewhere around then, and they'd only lose 22 units, and they could put those lower and, you know, actually provide a better housing mix as far as affordability.
Wilson and other opponents to the project say the building's height would cast a longer shadow over a strip of Balboa Park than some of the neighboring high-rises in Bankers Hill.
You know, it wasn't height for height's sake. I mean, the height of this building serves, you know, a number of very important purposes.
Omar Rawi of Graystar says the building's tall and slender design actually minimizes the shadow cast over Balboa Park. And he says the planning group's counteroffer of a 170-foot height limit is arbitrary.
It's difficult to have an arbitrary number as your starting point in any sort of discussion over compromise. And I think secondarily, you know, we recognize the critical need for housing and, in fact, affordable housing in this community. At 170 feet, we wouldn't be able to build any affordable housing on site.
Rawi adds keeping the same number of apartments in a shorter building would also mean trade-offs they just can't live with.
We'd lose the courtyard. The impact to the cathedral will be profound. As I mentioned, alternate massings actually create more shadow impacts on the park than the building that we've proposed. So the trade-offs, you know, on bringing the height down are just far too great. To us, it just doesn't make sense.
The City Council is scheduled to vote on the project next Monday. As the church service ends, Reverend Bridges encourages congregants to show up and urge the City Council to approve it. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
So we're back now with Miro Kopik with SDSU and Bottom Line Marketing to discuss this week's business news for the Friday Business Report. So, Miro, the big news coming out today is an end to the government shutdown. but not before having a huge impact on the economy. In fact, we heard from the CEO of Southwest Airlines just this week complaining about just how much money this shutdown has cost his company. So can you tell me, how has the shutdown impacted the private sector?
Well, using the airlines as an example, it's a great example. The big airlines this week, because of the shutdown and the loss of government employee flights, government contractor dollars, all the airlines combined just this month alone lost over $100 million. Southwest Airlines said they lost $15 million this month. They also, because the FAA was not working, they're looking to get approval of a lot of new routes to Hawaii for this summer, and they don't have them. And those approvals will be delayed for several weeks. And so consumers who are looking to book vacations this summer are going to have fewer options to go to Hawaii because Southwest doesn't have the flights that are available.
So another big business story out this week. Today was the very last day of the World Economic Forum, which wrapped up in Switzerland. And there, part of the conversation and part of the discussion was a potential slowdown on the global level for our economy. What did we learn?
Well, we learned a lot. We learned that the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, reduced their global growth forecast to 3.5% from 3.7%. This is their second reduction in the last 6 months. That's big news, and it scares CEOs, it scares government leaders. There's a few reasons for this. If you look at the top 4 economies in the world, Japan's in recession. Germany missed being in recession by a fraction of a hair at the end of 2018. China has recorded its slowest economic growth since 1990, and Chinese consumers are the consumers who actually drive the global luxury market. So any luxury brand like Gucci, is going to have far fewer buyers this year than in the past.
So here in San Diego, the San Diego Tourism Authority has rolled out a new campaign, a $19 million campaign to bring even more tourists to San Diego. And leaders there say that this is an international campaign. So my question to you is, how competitive is San Diego when it comes to attracting tourists from around the world?
San Diego is actually pretty competitive, but compared to the real big tourist destinations like Chicago, Los Angeles, and New York, our growth rate was a little less than those. But they also are attracting 50 to 70 million tourists. But we've had a lot of positive things in terms of better and updated attractions like SeaWorld or Legoland. A lot of our infrastructure has improved, so it makes San Diego a better destination. And importantly, with this new campaign called Something to Smile About, it actually starts today, this weekend, for the Farmers Open. So imagine on the East Coast, where this weekend they're expecting temperatures of negative 30 degrees, seeing beautiful San Diego at 70 degrees with Tiger Woods on the Torrey Pines golf course. Last year's campaign, we spent $15 million, but based on what we earned for tourists, that comes out to, for the incremental tourists, about $19 per tourist, and the average individual tourist spends over $320 when they're here in San Diego.
So a big return.
So a family of 4, $1,500, huge return. So we're hoping good things for the San Diego tourism.
Mira Kolpick, thank you so much for joining us for the Friday Business Report.
Thanks, Ebony.
We look at the crisis on the border caused by raw sewage and tons of trash, and at why a tall building opposed by some Bankers Hill residents may get council approval anyway. And we look at the current status of nuclear waste at San Onofre. That's all on the Roundtable tonight at 8:30.
It's been a beautiful week weather-wise, but we have Santa Ana conditions on the way this weekend. Meteorologist Adam DeRosso has more.
Overall, not a terrible forecast for us as we head into the upcoming weekend. Yes, we've got that Santa Ana setup, which will lead to some breezy winds. Otherwise, we've got lots of sunshine and some mild weather as we head through the upcoming weekend. That offshore flow keeping a lot of the clouds at bay. That marine layer not really able to impact most of the coastal areas. So we're going to keep things clear tonight. 51 degrees, our low temperature. As we take a look elsewhere, we're going to make it down to 46 in Escondido, El Cajon 48 degrees, into Mount Laguna a little bit cooler, 37 our low temperature. Notice we do have some wind advisories going into effect tonight and continuing through Saturday evening from Big Bear Lake to Temecula, all the way down to the border there, and mainly the higher elevations. That's where we could have gusts up to 55 miles per hour in the mountains. That extends not only our area, but north of LA as well. So we take a look at the forecast for our Saturday. Lots of sunshine, 80 in Escondido, San Diego, 76. Mount Laguna, we're up to 57 degrees for our high temperature. This quiet weather continues even as we head into next week with that ridge in the jet stream taking all of the active weather pretty far to our north. The coastal areas continuing with some sunshine, maybe a couple of extra clouds for early next week. A little cooler then, too. 68 for Monday, 71 on Tuesday. Inland, even warmer, 80 Saturday, 78 on Sunday. We're back into the mid-70s as we head into middle of the next week. Mountain areas, of course, a little bit cooler, upper 50s by next Monday, low 50s by Tuesday and Wednesday. And as we take a look into the desert, lots of sunshine with temperatures generally in the 70s. For KPBS News, I'm Adam Del Rosso. Back to you.
There's a documentary in the works about the Camp Fire by Oscar award-winning director Ron Howard. Rebuilding Paradise will chronicle the aftermath of California's deadliest wildfire. The documentary is a partnership with National Geographic Films. Ron Howard will spend a year following the community as it tries to rebuild. Shakespeare performed for a prison audience. San Diego's The Old Globe is taking its act behind bars. Reporter Beth Akmondo says it's part of rehabilitation efforts captured by our KPBS cameras.
For some people, attending a production of Shakespeare is something they might take for granted. But for the inmates at Sentinella State Prison, seeing A Midsummer Night's Dream live was a new experience to savor.
Masters, spread yourselves!
It was a beautiful performance. It was more than what I expected. This is my first time ever being a part of anything like this, so it was new to me. It's a good thing.
Oh, it was great because the performers were so engaged with the audience that it made you feel like you're a part of it.
I will have Peter Quince write a ballad of this dream, and it shall be called Bottom Street, because it has no bottom, and I will sing it the latter end of the play before the Duke, peradventure, to make it the more gracious, I will sing it at this his death.
Those performers were part of Globe for All, which provides free performances of plays throughout San Diego, including in prisons. Last March, the Globe hosted a conference focused on Shakespeare in prisons. One of the participants was Kurt Tuftelin, founder of the Shakespeare Behind Bars program.
The reason that I use Shakespeare is because he writes about every story that any human being could ever encounter, whether it's now or 400 years ago. And he writes about outsiders.
It's outsiders and those on the margins of society that Tuftelin wanted to reach. The Globe decided to do its own version of Shakespeare Behind Bars because one of its core values is to show that theater matters and that it can matter to even those on the fringes of society. So it initiated 2 programs, Reflecting Shakespeare, which engages prisoners through classroom examination of the Bard's text, and Globe for All.
Here they come now. Please enjoy William Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Miss Erica was one of the teaching artists at the Globe for All performance last November at Sentinella.
If you want to talk about theater mattering, having a direct effect on people, what we're doing here and what I have the privilege to do week on week with the inmates here at Sentinella, that's the heart of it. I've seen people completely transform, and I'm not talking about gaining acting skills. I'm talking about learning about connecting with other people, learning that hard work has an effect, that you will actually accomplish something, learning what putting your heart and soul into something and having it give back to you. And watching a group of people go through that is transformative. Today, theater mattered to a lot of people.
Oh, it's very important because it feels that somebody cares that we see something from out there that we get inspired.
Some may question why we should care about enriching the lives of those who have committed crimes and are serving time. Shakespeare plays, such as The Tempest, advocate for kindness, compassion, and forgiveness. So perhaps Freedom Bradley Ballantyne takes his cue from the Bard when he says that those in prison are just people who have made mistakes and are paying for them, and we should do all we can to rehabilitate them.
Most of the work that we do really centers on people taking stock in their life and using Shakespeare's words, because he talked about so many different aspects of the human condition to really apply to their lives and see a way out. We've also seen that it gives people a sense of worth.
People like inmate Sephiron Scorza.
For me, this is very important. This is important because it offers an opportunity of change. It offers hope to those who may have lost hope.
I really want people to know that these programs work, that these programs change people, that these programs reduce the recidivism rates.
The Globe returns to Centinela next month to once again show how a playwright who's been dead for 4 centuries can help teach inmates about empathy, introspection, and perhaps even about how to find a way to succeed outside of prison. Through its programs, the Globe is proving that theater matters, even behind bars. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
The next Globe for All performance in prison will be at the Centinela State Prison on February 7th. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.